Have you ever felt someone pulling away right at the moment things start to feel real, and you wondered if that distance meant they didn't care, or if it meant they cared more than they could handle? Stay with this until the end, because by the time you finish listening, you will understand a pattern that most people misread, and that understanding can save you months, even years, of emotional confusion. Here is the truth most people never hear. Some hearts do not fall in love loudly. They do not rush. They do not chase. They do not confess with fireworks and big promises. Some hearts fall in love quietly, carefully, almost in secret, and avoidant hearts are the quietest of them all. An avoidant does not move toward love the way movies teach us. They move around it, they circle it, they test it, they fight it, and sometimes they even run from it. Not because they feel nothing, but because what they feel is too powerful to ignore and too frightening to control. Think about this for a moment. Every human being wants connection. That is not a choice. It is wired into the nervous system. We are built to attach. We are built to bond. We are built to seek safety in other people. But not everyone learned that closeness is safe. Some people learned that closeness means pain. Some people learned that needing someone means losing yourself. Some people learned that loving someone means eventually getting hurt. So their system adapted. It didn't make them cold. It made them careful. It didn't make them heartless. It made them guarded. This is what avoidance really is. Not a lack of emotion, but a deep, old strategy to survive. An avoidant person does not wake up and decide to be distant. Their body does it for them. Their mind does it for them. Their past does it for them. When they start to feel something real, something deep, something that actually matters, their nervous system reads it as danger. Not because love is dangerous, but because their history taught them that attachment comes with a cost. So instead of moving closer, they pause. Instead of opening up, they analyze. Instead of relaxing into the connection, they look for space. And from the outside, it looks like disinterest. It looks like confusion. It looks like mixed signals. But on the inside, it is a battle between desire and fear. Here is where most people get it wrong. They think love always looks like pursuit. They think caring always looks like consistency. They think if someone is pulling back, it must mean they do not care enough. But for an avoidant, the opposite can be true. The more they feel, the more their defenses wake up. The more important you become, the more their system tries to protect them from losing control. Because control is how they stay safe. Distance is how they stay regulated. Independence is how they breathe. An avoidant does not fall in love and think, finally I can relax. They fall in love and think, this can hurt me. They don't think, this feels good. They think, this feels risky. And risk, to a nervous system trained by disappointment, feels like a threat. So they manage the threat. They slow things down. They create space. They convince themselves they need more time. They tell themselves they are better alone. They focus on flaws. They focus on logic. They focus on reasons not to go deeper. Not because you are not enough, but because what they feel is starting to matter too much. This is why avoidant love is often misunderstood. It does not announce itself. It does not arrive with certainty. It shows up as hesitation. It shows up as restraint. It shows up as a person who cares but does not know how to hold that care without losing their sense of safety. And if you do not understand this pattern, you will read their silence as rejection. You will read their space as lack of interest. You will read their distance as the end. When in reality, for them, it can be the moment things start to feel real. There is a deep psychological reason for this. The brain does not care about your happiness. The brain cares about your survival. If someone grew up learning that closeness leads to disappointment, abandonment, or pain, their brain will treat emotional intimacy like a fire alarm, not because the present is dangerous, but because the past trained it to expect danger. So when love appears, instead of feeling calm, they feel activated. Instead of feeling secure, they feel alert. And their system does what it has always done. It creates space. It looks for exits. It tries to stay in control. This does not make them broken. It makes them human. It makes them shaped by experience. It makes them someone whose heart learned to protect itself before it learned how to trust. And here is the part that changes everything. When an avoidant starts acting conflicted, when they start pulling close and then stepping back, when they start caring but also distancing, it is often because something inside them has been touched, something real, something that matters, something that threatens their old emotional walls. Love, for an avoidant, is not comfortable at first. It is disorienting. It challenges their identity. It challenges their belief that they are better off alone. It challenges their emotional armor. And anything that challenges a survival pattern will be met with resistance. Not because the feeling is weak, but because the feeling is strong enough to shake their internal balance. So if you have ever wondered why someone could look interested one moment and distant the next, why they could open up and then suddenly close off, why they could care and yet seem afraid of caring, understand this. You are not watching someone who feels nothing. You are watching someone who feels something and does not yet feel safe enough to fully stay in it. And here is your reward for staying with this. When you learn to see avoidance not as indifference, but as a protective response to emotional intensity, you stop taking their fear personally. You stop measuring your worth by their distance. You start understanding the real story behind their behavior. And that understanding gives you power. Power to respond with clarity. Power to keep your self-respect. Power to stop chasing what is not ready. And power to recognize when silence is not empty, but full of unspoken emotion waiting for safety to exist. What happens inside a person when their heart wants closeness, but their mind is trained to avoid it? This is where the real struggle begins. Not outside, not in messages or pauses, but in the quiet space where emotions and fear argue with each other every single day. If the first part showed you that avoidance is not emptiness, this part will show you the invisible war that creates those confusing actions in the first place. Inside an avoidant, there is often a constant push and pull. One side wants connection. The other side wants control. One side wants to lean in. The other side wants to stay untouched. This is not drama. This is not games. This is a nervous system trying to keep itself steady in a world that once felt unsafe. And when something meaningful appears, that system does not celebrate. It scans. It questions. It prepares for impact. Most people think emotions live in the heart. In reality, they live in the body. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. If someone learned early that depending on others leads to disappointment, their body will react before their thoughts can catch up. Tight chest, restless energy, a sudden need for space, a strange urge to distract themselves. None of this is planned. It is automatic. It is the body trying to return to what feels familiar, even if what feels familiar is loneliness. This is why logic does not fix avoidance. You cannot think your way out of a pattern that lives in the nervous system. You cannot argue with a reflex. You cannot reason with a survival response. An avoidant might tell themselves that everything is fine. They might even want to move closer. But when the emotional intensity rises, their system reacts as if a boundary has been crossed. And when that happens, distance starts to feel like relief. Here is the part most people never see. The conflict is exhausting. Imagine wanting something and being afraid of it at the same time. Imagine craving closeness, but feeling restless when it gets too close. Imagine caring deeply, but feeling trapped by that care. This is not comfort. This is tension. This is living in a state where your own emotions feel like a threat to your balance. And over time, the mind learns one simple rule: keep things light. Keep things controlled. Keep things at a distance. That rule works. It keeps pain away. It keeps expectations low. It keeps vulnerability limited, but it also keeps real connection out. And when someone finally breaks through that wall, even a little, the system reacts. Not with peace, but with alarm. The person might suddenly focus on flaws. They might question their feelings. They might convince themselves they need more space. They might become busy. They might become harder to reach, not because the bond is weak, but because it is starting to matter. This is the inner battle. One part says, "This feels good." Another part says, "This could cost you." One part says, "Stay." Another part says, "Protect yourself." And protection, for someone who learned to rely only on themselves, often looks like emotional distance. It looks like silence. It looks like pulling back before things go too far. It looks like choosing independence over uncertainty. There is also something else at play: control. For many avoidant people, control equals safety. When you control how close someone gets, you control how much they can hurt you. When you control your exposure, you control your risk. When you keep your emotional world small, you keep it predictable. Love, on the other hand, is not predictable. It asks for trust. It asks for surrender. It asks for you to let someone see you without armor. And that feels like standing without shelter in a storm. So when real feelings start to grow, the mind looks for ways to restore that sense of control. It might create emotional distance. It might focus on work. It might find reasons to slow things down. It might say, "I'm not ready." It might say, "I need space." It might say, "I'm better on my own." These are not lies. They are defenses. They are attempts to quiet a system that feels overloaded. And here is the painful truth. The more meaningful the connection, the louder that system can become. A casual bond does not threaten identity. A deep bond does. A surface-level connection does not challenge old beliefs. A real one does. So the closer something gets to the heart, the stronger the urge to create distance can feel. This is why avoidant behavior often increases right when things start to matter most. This does not mean growth is impossible. It means growth feels uncomfortable. It means change feels unsafe before it feels freeing. It means the mind and body need time to learn a new story. A story where closeness does not equal loss. A story where attachment does not equal danger. A story where needing someone does not mean losing yourself. But until that story is learned, the old patterns will keep showing up. The overthinking, the emotional shutdown, the sudden need for space, the urge to retreat into independence. None of this is about manipulation. It is about regulation. It is about a system trying to calm itself the only way it knows how. If you have ever taken someone's distance as proof that you were not enough, let this change that belief. Their struggle is not a measurement of your value. It is a reflection of their internal wiring. It is a sign of a system that learned to survive by staying guarded. And when that system starts to care, it does not celebrate. It panics first. Understanding this does not mean accepting less than you deserve. It means seeing the full picture. It means knowing that behind many mixed signals is a person who is trying to manage emotions they were never taught how to hold. And sometimes, the greatest battles are not the ones people show you. They are the ones they fight quietly, just to stay balanced in a world that feels too close for comfort. Have you ever noticed how the more you care, the less they seem to? How the more you explain, the less they listen? How the more you give, the more invisible you start to feel? It's a strange kind of pain. Quiet. Heavy. The kind that sits in your chest and asks the same question every night. What am I doing wrong? And here's the real question. What if the problem is not that you care too little, but that you care too much. Stay with this until the end, because if you really understand what's about to be said, you won't just change how someone else sees you. You will change how you see yourself, and that changes everything. Let's be honest for a moment. Most people are not hurt because they loved. They are hurt because they loved without limits. They gave without boundaries. They stayed without being chosen. They explained without being heard. They kept trying even when the other person had already stopped trying. And slowly, without noticing, they trained the other person to relax, to get comfortable, to stop appreciating, because the human mind works in a very simple way. It respects what has value, and it ignores what feels guaranteed. This is the painful truth about chasing. When you chase, you send a message. Not with words, with energy. And that message is simple. You don't have to try. I will. You don't say it. You show it. You show it when you reply too fast. You show it when you forgive too easily. You show it when you explain yourself again and again, hoping this time they will finally understand. You show it when you stay, even when your heart is tired of begging for basic respect. At first, it feels like love. It feels like loyalty. It feels like effort. But over time, something changes. Not in you, in them. The human mind adapts fast. What once felt special starts to feel normal. What once felt rare starts to feel common. What once felt valuable starts to feel replaceable. Not because you became less, but because you made your presence too easy to lose and too easy to get back. Here is something most people don't want to hear. The mind does not value effort. The mind values contrast. It values distance. It values what can be lost. When someone knows you will always be there, no matter how they act, no matter how little they give, no matter how cold they become, something dangerous happens. Their fear disappears. And when fear disappears, respect often follows it. This is not about playing games. This is about understanding human nature. Think about it. The things you worked hardest for in your life, you protect them. The things that came too easy, you forget them. Not because you are a bad person, but because your brain is wired to measure value through effort, through risk, through the possibility of loss. When you care too much, you remove that risk. You remove that tension. You remove that question in their mind that says, "What if I lose this?" And when that question is gone, so is the urgency to show up. So is the pressure to do better. So is the reason to grow. And slowly, without any big fight, without any dramatic ending, you start to feel smaller. You start to notice that you are the one initiating, the one fixing, the one explaining, the one waiting, the one hoping. And they are just there, comfortable, certain, unchallenged. This is where the pain really begins, not because they changed, but because you realize you've been shrinking to keep them comfortable. You've been lowering your standards to keep the peace. You've been quiet about your needs because you were afraid to lose them. And in that fear, you taught them the worst lesson possible. You taught them that your presence has no conditions. The human mind is not cruel. It is efficient. It takes shortcuts. If something is always available, it stops protecting it. If someone always stays, it stops choosing them on purpose. And when someone stops choosing you on purpose, the relationship starts running on autopilot. No intention, no effort, no growth, just habit. This is why chasing never creates attraction. It creates comfort, and comfort without respect is dangerous, because comfort says, "I don't have to try today," and then tomorrow, and then next week. And then one day, you wake up and realize you are giving your whole heart to someone who only gives you their leftovers. Here is the hardest part to accept. You cannot make someone value you by giving them more. You cannot make someone respect you by trying harder. You cannot make someone choose you by making yourself smaller. Value is not created by sacrifice alone. It is created by boundaries, by self-respect, by the quiet confidence that says, I want you, but I don't need to lose myself to keep you. When you chase, you are not proving love. You are proving fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of not being enough. Fear of losing what you already feel slipping away. And the mind on the other side feels that, not in words, in energy. And energy always speaks louder than promises. This is the painful truth. The more you try to hold on to someone who is pulling away, the faster they drift. Not because they are evil, but because you removed the one thing that makes the mind wake up, the possibility of loss. And if you stay until the end of this video, you will understand something even deeper. You will understand why the moment you stop caring the way you used to, the moment you stop chasing, the moment you stop begging for effort, something shifts. Not outside first, but inside you. And that inner shift is what changes everything. For now, remember this. You were not born to convince someone to see your worth. You were born to know it first. And the day you stop chasing is not the day you lose them. It is the day you stop losing yourself. Why does attention lose its power when it becomes constant? Why does the mind stop feeling excited about something that is always there? And why do people often wake up only after something starts to slip away? These questions sound emotional, but the answers are rooted deep in how the human brain works. And if you understand this, you will stop blaming yourself for caring too much and start seeing the pattern that has been shaping your pain. The human mind is built to notice change. It is built to react to contrast. It does not stay alert for things that never move. Think about noise in a room. At first, you hear it. After some time, your brain filters it out, not because the sound is gone, but because your mind has decided it is no longer important. The same thing happens with attention, affection, and presence. When something is always there, the brain stops highlighting it. It stops protecting it. It stops feeling the need to respond to it with the same energy. This is not cold. This is not heartless. This is simply how the brain saves effort. It focuses on what feels uncertain. It focuses on what can change. It focuses on what might disappear. This is why people suddenly notice value when it is no longer guaranteed. Not because they suddenly became wiser, but because the mind finally wakes up when comfort is replaced with risk. When you give steady attention without limits, the brain on the other side slowly rewrites the story. At first, it feels warm, it feels safe, it feels good to be wanted. But over time, that warmth turns into something quieter, something less sharp, something that does not demand action. The mind starts to assume, not appreciate. It starts to expect, not earn. And expectation is the enemy of effort. Here is a simple truth. Desire grows in space, not in pressure, not in constant presence. The mind needs room to wonder. It needs moments of absence to create thought. When everything is always available, there is nothing to imagine, nothing to miss, nothing to question. And when there is nothing to question, the emotional engine slows down. This is why people often feel confused. They say, I gave everything. I showed up every day. I was always there. And yet somehow, the connection faded. Not because giving is wrong, but because giving without balance removes the tension that keeps the mind engaged. It removes the small uncertainty that keeps someone emotionally awake. The brain measures importance in a strange way. It does not look at how much you offer. It looks at how easy you are to access. When access is too easy, the signal of value becomes weaker. Not because you are less, but because the mind is designed to chase what it does not fully control. This is why effort feels attractive when it is not forced. This is why mystery feels alive. This is why distance, when healthy, can deepen interest instead of killing it. The mind wants to lean forward, not fall asleep. It wants to reach, not relax into certainty too soon.